We need your help in continuing to fight the spread of COVID-19. If you are eligible to receive the COVID vaccine, I encourage you to do so. If you have family members or loved ones who are eligible, I would ask that you encourage them to be vaccinated. You and they, in doing so, will protect yourselves, your family, your friends, your co-workers, and our community.
With a mission to deliver fiscally responsible, highly dependable services to the citizens of our community and the region with integrity and professionalism, this is the City of Albany Commission Meeting with Mayor Bo Duro, Mayor Pro Tem John Howard, Ward 1, Matt Fuller, Ward 2, BJ Fletcher, Ward 3, Chad Warbington, Ward 4, Bob Langstaff Jr., Ward 5, Demetrius Young, Ward 6, City Manager Sharon Subadale, City Clerk Sonia Talbot, and City Attorney Nathan Davis. This is the City of Albany Commission Meeting.
Good morning. Welcome to the March 16th, 2021 work session of the Albany City Commission. If we could begin by calling the roll. Ms. Kelly?
Ward 1.
Here.
Ward 2.
Here.
Ward 3.
Here.
Ward 4.
Ward 4's here.
Ward 5.
Here.
Ward 6.
Here.
Mayor.
Mayor's here. Before we get started, we have two people signed up to speak this morning. Mr. William Wright and Mr. Henry Mathis. Mr. Wright, are you prepared to address the commission? I am. Okay. You step forward, please.
Bring you greetings, and this is about page 23, the Sowega Air Service increase. And this is a very important issue when we look at air service, but you have a handout that outlines a concern we raised. That is, the City of Albany, Dougherty County Commission and School Board spent $1 billion about a year and a half. Most of the time blowing money. This is an example. I don't know if you've taken macroeconomics, but in economics we have a principle called equilibrium, which means the supply and demand curve have to intersect where price and demand meet. And anyone who come here and tell you that you're going to increase air service with prices as high as they are is either a lunatic or take us for lunatics. It is not going to happen. We've had 4 or 5 studies. Albany State did a study. We've had 2 consultants that turned the Sowega Airport into the international airport and all that stuff, blowing money. We have to be realistic. For example, some of you may recall when Firestone closed. We put all this propaganda out there. We love Firestone. Then Cooper get ready to close. We love Cooper. Always after the fact and blowing money on something that's unrealistic. So look at paragraph 1. We outlined that for you. This part of our New Deal, Mayor and Commissioner, we are having our capacity building workshop at Arthur K. Williams Building this morning from 11 to 4. In paragraph 2, we deal with the expectations. To expect a different outcome when you know it's not going to come. All you got to do is look at the River Aquarium. We were told that you're going to have so many tourists coming here. Same thing about the Hilton, blowing money. Now look at paragraph 3. We have to recognize when we've blown a lot of money, if you take supply and demand, when they intersect, that's the only way you have a chance. You can also use a mathematical formula called standard deviation to tell you whether the person who's coming there telling the truth. Third thing you need to do is review how you construct the contract. The contract has to be one where he or she does not get paid but 5 or 10% of the proposed contract unless their project manifests some real increases in the expected outcome. Now look at paragraph 4. dealing with the supply and demand curve, macroeconomics, 0.95. People tend to go to things and the suppliers want to supply where there's a medium of who gets what. In the absence of that, you can look at land, labor, and capital. Those factors determine the outcome in our growth development policy in the United States. So we've outlined that for you, and we would ask you not to continue blowing money, because if you look at it, sales tax is at the same level of property tax, and particularly in the city's budget. So who do you think paying all those taxes when we make up 80% of the community? That is African American and black. We're the one paying it. We're the one to get the least amount of it back, the least, if anything. So when we continue to focus on that, we need to be realistic in our outcome and not blowing public dollars, because one thing you can look at, if you had a request such as that, you wouldn't finance out of your pocket when you know something's not going to happen. I'm not telling you what they say. I was out there when those consultants came and told us this was going to happen. We were going to come to International Airport. That's $60,000. Another came and said, oh, we can do this. All we got to do is make a few changes, and then you're going to get up. But look at what we're doing. We got out there, fixed base operator, paying us $15,000 or $20,000 a year, and we building him a $4 million hub. Still public money.
1 minute, Mr. Wright.
Well, just invite you all, Mayor, to come to the capacity building workshop. We're going to be there from 11 until 4. And this time you'll not have an excuse for not coming. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Any questions, Mr. Wright? Mayor Pro Tem.
No question from Mr. Wright.
I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem.
No, sir, no question.
Commissioner Fletcher.
No question.
Commissioner Worthington.
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No question.
Commissioner Young.
Good morning, Mr. Wright. No question.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Mathis, would you like to come forward? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address you. And I'm going to address you under item under section 3, Public Administration, Finance Matters, item number B, Solid Waste Collection Service Contract Service Expansion. Contract the remaining self-performed portion of residential solid waste collections with the current contractors. Let me say, I know that my being here today is perhaps in vain. I understand that the votes are already in place to make this happen. There are 4 votes to make it happen. But I want to just raise a couple of questions. One is, why the utility board make a recommendation when they only have the authority to spend $200,000? Well, preliminary investigations showed and said to me that they were looking at buying equipment which they don't have the authority to buy. This body has the authority to buy the equipment. Then they threw in a curve, and they said, well, you know, if we're going to get new equipment, it's going to be cost prohibitive for us to put in all these tracking devices. Tracking devices now. This city has operated since its creation in garbage with no tracking devices. Now, for a private contractor, if he wants to see if his guys are on the job and doing what they need to do, that's fine. You can get trackers in your truck and all this other sophisticated technology. But I understand that then shot the price up. And then there was a discussion says, well, I think it might be better if we just maybe contract this out. So why the utility board? How did it get there and not to this body? You're the policy making body. So why didn't it come to you first? Well, I'm sure I'll hear some excuses why. Secondly, when I look at the process, we know that in the very beginning, when this took place, maybe back in October of last year, to go with a new contractor, we understand that there were 4, and 1 was eliminated because of price, and then there were 3, and then I looked at the results of the 3, and 1 was $1 and about 30 or 40 cents different than the other. But the difference was the one who was $1 and 40 cents more had more experience, as well as the second one had more experience, and then the one that had 0 experience. So why? My question is, why did procurement make a recommendation to bring in someone with 0 experience, 0 equipment, as opposed to one person that is very close, 27 points and 30 points? And then it's my understanding that, well, they're going to do it at the same price. Will there be a $300,000 balloon payment at the end of this bid? Will there be a $300,000 payment? So if there's a $300,000 payment at the end of this 1-year contract, then are they in fact the cheapest or the lowest? When I was on this body, we talked about best bid, lowest bid. And the lowest bid is not always the best bid. Now, it's my understanding that the contractor now was to make certain that they keep it at the same rate. Well, if you keep it at the same rate and they're the lowest bidder, should there or should there not be some reduction in garbage collection for the taxpayers? I'm just asking the question. And then,
1 minute.
when we look at what's going on now, my position is they're on 1-year contract. Let them work that contract out before you vote on it. You want to vote and give them a contract and they're still a year out. So if you do give it to them, you get rid of all the city's equipment, and for some reason they fail, then what happens? The city now has to go back and reinvest. What happened with the Georgia lease pool, the GMA lease pool? Has that been used? Has it even been talked about? So I think that you should wait before you let them serve that year out, get the tracking data from Public Works, where you're going to get both pros and cons, and then, Mr. Mayor, I thank you for the time, but I just hope this body will delay that.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher?
No question.
Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, nothing further.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Master.
Good morning, sir.
I guess in your experience as a city commissioner, can you recall any times that the current garbage collection was ever lacking or didn't, perform up to standard in terms of service to the city of Albany? And this is the city garbage service.
Some years ago, there were a group out of Texas, I think Red River or somebody out of Texas, that Wilson and Hatley was doing some subcontracting work for. There was some minor concerns with that, and that led then to, I do believe, Trans Waste coming on board. But the thing of it is that they both had experience. Now, one had experience and still had some deficiencies, some minor deficiencies that led procurement at that time to when the bid came up, when the contract came up, to put it out for bid, and as a result, Trans Waste came in and got that. So yes, we have seen that take place with one with experience. And we've also seen that we've never given a contract during my tenure from '87. I've never seen a contract given to one with this big with zero experience.
And the reason I ask that is because we also had some issues, especially in my ward, with trash collection, and I've only been on the board a year with the subcontractor, but I know we were able to kind of take care of those deficiencies, as you call them, with our own people, our own city garbage collection. But, you know, in thinking about moving forward where we privatize our entire garbage collection, it's very worrisome that when a contractor doesn't perform up to the service level, that the city is left in a lurch and we can't operate our garbage collection as you know, to that certain level. One of the things about sanitation collection, garbage collection, that it is a public health issue, and it can become a very serious situation when we do not have the services up to the level that we need to. And we saw that happening last year with the previous contractor. So I would agree with your assessment that the city does not need to lose total control over its garbage collection. Again, garbage collection is a health and sanitation issue, and we always need to be in control of that. Government needs to be in control of that for the people. You know, one thing about private companies and they have a bottom line to fulfill, and also we also need to be thinking about our workers, our city workers, who, you know, will have to fall under whatever conditions, situations, less pay, less benefits than possibly than they would under the city, than they would under a private contractor. So those are some of the issues that also give me some great concern. So I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner,
That's all.
if I would just follow up on that. In addition to the transition, we know that city government is not in the business of making a profit. City government is in the business of providing a service. Private contractors are in the business to make a profit, and they are going to make a profit. So if for years, since the beginning of this city, our sanitation workers, our public work workers have done an outstanding job. But now there is conversation from this body that have been had with that private contractor. There is conversation that's been had. Encouragement. When I go out on Foster Road and see lines of equipment lined up already, I mean, why invest in this if there's no potential opportunity for it? Why invest in all this equipment? So somebody from this body has been talking and been lining up the ducks to make this decision. But when you give this contract to a person that's on with zero experience, first of all, fine, that's over, water under the bridge. But then to give them the whole hog, and they've not finished 6 months into the first year of a trial basis, it says something to me. Now I'm wondering if there's the talk that's going on, how does it tie in with this body? Mr. Mayor, I know you're new on the job, but there are some parties, there are some players that's involved in this process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, sir.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. We have two citizens signed up. Mr. Forgy, it is zoning case 21-13, a request to rezone the property located at 3007 Old Dawson Road from R3C to CR. Approved by the Planning Commission 9-0. Mr. Forgy.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. This property is located at 3007 Old Dawson Road. Here you can see it's on the north side of Old Dawson Road, just to the west of Point North Boulevard. The application is a request to rezone an approximate 4.66 acre tract from R3C, which is single family and two family residential district conditional, to CR, which is community residential multiple dwelling district. An approved rezoning will allow for the construction of Point North Senior Village Phase 3. It's 80 apartment units for low-income seniors. The records show that the property was rezoned from R1, which is single-family residential, to R3C in 1998. The conditions of the rezoning limit the development to single-family housing. Duplexes are not allowed. The adjoining property to the west was rezoned from R1 to CRC in 2007. The adjoining property to the east was rezoned from R1 to C5C in 2011. The area further to the west has retained its original R1 designation. Here you can see a zoning map showing that. The property in question is outlined in blue. The CR is to the west between it and R1, and then it's a variety of commercial uses to the north and east, except for a spot of residential, which is R3. The proposed apartments should be compatible with adjacent properties to the north, which have been developed for senior apartments, which are Point North Senior Village Phases 1 and 2. The adjoining 19.4 acre tract to the west is zoned CRC conditional for a senior adult community for 55 and older, or single family housing not to exceed 4 units per acre. The proposed rezoning and use should be compatible with the adjoining office preschool to the east. The rezoning should not adversely affect adjacent properties developed for senior housing or the future usability of the 19.48 acre tract to the west, since it is zoned for a senior community or low-density single-family housing. The current R3C designation allows for single-family housing, which does provide an economic use for the property. According to the TRIP Generation Manual, a senior adult housing development could generate 3.7 weekday trips per unit or 3.23 Saturday trips per unit. 80 units are proposed, which could result in 296 daily weekday trips or 258 Saturday trips. Access will be from Point North Boulevard via West Point Court, with no access allowed from Old Dawson Road. Point North Boulevard currently has a trip capacity of 13,000 trips per day, and traffic count south of Kensington in 19 was 7,900 trips per day, and at West Point Court in just last month, it was 9,100 trips. So the traffic has, on average, increased a little bit. The traffic count taken February 26, 2001 shows 9,126 trips, daily trips at the intersection of Point North Boulevard and West Point Court, an increase of about 1,100 daily trips since 2019. Traffic counts show peak hours of traffic at 7 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the evening. Trip Generation Manual estimates a senior adult community can generate 26 daily trips at the morning peak hour and 25 trips at the PM peak hour. Trips should not overburden peak hour traffic at this location. Future road improvements list the following proposed road project for the area: to widen Point North Boulevard from 2 to 4 lanes between Dawson and Old Dawson Road. Albany Transit serves this area with stops at Point North Boulevard. Here you can see the subject property and surrounding land use. The larger, almost 20-acre parcel to the west is vacant, and there's senior apartments, phase 1 and phase 2 of this same development to the north and northeast. Albany ARC is directly to the west, east. Here's an aerial view of that. Here's the proposed apartment layout put on the site. It's one single 3-story building, L-shaped. There is a detention pond between Old Dawson Road and the apartments. There's probably 70 or 80 feet between the road and the apartments. The future land use map recommends low-density housing, which is an average of 4 units per acre, for the property and the adjacent area to the west. Commercial development is recommended to the north and east on Old Dawson Road. Proposed use for high-density housing, an average of 8 units per acre, does not conform to the low-density housing recommendation. The property is located within a transitional area. Single-family housing is located to the west. Multifamily housing and commercial uses are located to the north and east. Development of Phase 3 of the Point North Senior Village will connect with Phases 1 and 2 and provide a buffer between the area of commercial and residential to the west. The Planning Commission recommended approval to rezone to CR Community Residential Multiple Dwelling District with the following condition: access is prohibited from Old Dawson Road. That concludes the presentation. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Forgy. Any questions, Mr. Howard?
Good morning, Paul. How you do?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Paul, at the planning commission that I attended last week, and it said no traffic ingress or egress off Old Dawson Road. Approximately how close would this retention pond be from Old Dawson Road?
I'm not sure how close it would be. It would be setback. The setbacks, I think, are 30 feet, so it would be at least 30 feet. And then the retention pond would be approximately 40 feet. So it would be set well off of Dawson Road.
Okay. So if I was driving down Dawson Road, I can look to my right and see the retention pond, right?
Possibly. I mean, it would be lower than the road, so you would have to look down. But yes, it would. And it may be landscaped, so I can't say for sure. And you should be looking at the road, too. So.
Okay.
But yes, it would be visible.
Okay. That's it, man.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
That was part of my question. Was there going to be any landscaping on that side that, I guess that'd be on the south side of that retention pond?
That would be a better question for the developer. We don't have a site plan that's that detailed, but I imagine they would landscape it to some degree.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Mr. Fletcher?
No questions.
Mr. Warmington?
Yeah, Mr. Forgy, a couple of questions. So, kind of to Commissioner Howard's point, is there going to be required any kind of buffer between the pond and Old Dawson, like fencing or vegetation buffer, or is it just going to be a wide open detention pond?
Well, it depends on the steepness of the slope, whether or not there's a fence. So there could be required a fence if it's steep enough. But I'm not sure of the engineering details. There's no required buffer. I mean, there's a required setback. Landscape buffer, there's no requirement to that.
Okay, so nothing we're requiring.
No.
What about a buffer between them and the ARC? Are we requiring any kind of buffer between them and ARC to the east?
No, that would just be residential to residential. Well, that's residential for commercial, so actually, I'm not sure, but I think usually commercial is responsible for the 4A buffer. So I would have to check, but we would not be requiring a buffer on the apartment complex.
Okay. So is that something that you're saying it's not required, or is something you need to?
There may be a requirement, but I don't believe it would be on the apartment complex to provide.
Okay.
Generally, if there's an existing commercial use and residential is developed next to it, the commercial use would be required to put the buffer in. But I will confirm that.
Okay. Then my last question, and this may be a question for the engineer on the project, but it appears there's a sidewalk that's going to be accessing Old Dawson. Is that what that line is indicating to the east of the detention pond? I wouldn't think we'd want a sidewalk coming out to Old Dawson if that's what that is.
There's a sanitary sewer easement. Maybe that's it. This is on the East or the west side? Okay. The east side, yes, it is a sidewalk. I think they're looking for connectivity for the seniors. A lot of them do not drive, so to make it easy for them to get to places, they're providing sidewalks to connect them to places that they may want to go. There's a new bank just to the south there, and there's shopping further along on Westover. So that would be the intention behind that sidewalk.
I guess the challenge is there's nowhere to go once you get to that point. There's no sidewalks to the east or the west. It seemed like it would.
That's true.
It seemed like we would want to filter residents up through the way a car would go out and come back around Point North, which I think there is more sidewalks, but that probably doesn't have a bearing on zoning, but it may be something when engineering approves the plans.
Well, the long-term plan, of course, is to improve Old Dawson Road, and at some point that will happen. I mean, it's not a programmed plan, and at some point that will happen, and it may include sidewalks. So if there were a sidewalk put in, it would eventually connect to new sidewalks.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. All right, that's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No additional questions.
Commissioner Young?
No question.
Thank you, Ms. Forgy.
You're welcome.
We have two people who have signed up, one citizen and one gentleman from Roswell. The first person is Mr. Bobby Donnelly.
Morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
I'm Bobby Donnelly with Lanier Engineering, civil engineer for the developer. And Mr. Forgy has done an excellent job explaining kind of what we're here asking for. But I'll, to kind of speak to some of your questions, Chad, that there is an additional sidewalk. Some of the hatching is missing, but there will be a sidewalk connection back to the existing sidewalk in Phase 1 and Phase 2, which is through West Point Court. And once you get to West Point Court, there is sidewalk parallel West Point Court all the way out to Point North. It actually turns down Point North and runs all the way to the current bus stop over in front of the Phase 1 building. And the thoughts from the architect on the sidewalk going out to Old Dawson was pretty much just like Mr. Forgy mentioned. You know, there have forever been, you know, plans of, you know, improvements to Old Dawson Road, which my assumption would be would include sidewalks in the future. So that sidewalk connection there is really just kind of preemptive to, you know, anticipating that and already having that connection in place. So, and then the couple of questions about landscaping. Yeah, I mean, the project will most definitely have landscaping. They typically carry a pretty heavy landscaping budget on the projects. And like you mentioned, the developer is the same developer from Phase 1 and Phase 2. So this West Point Court was kind of set up, cul-de-sac, kind of with the intention of providing, you know, access to this parcel back out to Point North. So I'll entertain any questions that anybody has from a technical standpoint, or the developer is here as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Mr. Howard, any questions for Mr. Donnelly?
Good morning. How you do this morning?
Doing good.
Let me ask you another question about the retention pond. And you said that the budget is to improve the aesthetic of it. And if it's a retention pond, is it something that the state requires that when you build these places that they have something like a retention pond now?
Yes, sir. The way that'll work is, you know, right now there's currently, you know, a certain amount of runoff that's draining toward Old Dawson Road under the wooded condition. There's one house on it right now. So the city has a stormwater ordinance that will require a detention pond with water quality requirements and all to be installed as part of the development, so that we're not increasing the runoff draining into your roadway.
Okay. And it would not be fenced in, a little small fence around the retention pond, would it?
Typically, we try not to. Typically, we try to keep the slopes flat enough and keep it shallow enough. I mean, most everybody would prefer to see, landscaping versus a fence, but sometimes a fence is required. So when we get further into design.
Oh. That's it, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem,
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher,
No question.
Mr. Warmington.
Yeah, Mr. Donnelly, just a couple of little questions. So as far as amenities, looks like you have designed a community garden.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the clubhouse, they would share the clubhouse with the next door, phase 2. I guess there's like a community center in the center.
There will be, and I'll let the developer, inside the building. It will be inside the building.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the amenities are inside the.
Yeah, so they're inside the building, pretty much like where you see the covered drop off on the inside. When you come in, the primary door is right there. There'll be community clubhouse, most of the time a fitness room, all of those amenities that in phase 2 is in a separate building.
Okay.
In this phase, they will be in the primary entryway of the building, which is kind of the same thing to have in phase 1 as well.
Okay, that's great. I thought the community garden was a great touch, just trying to encourage fresh produce and things such as that. So I thought that was a good amenity too to design. I mean, you could easily have added 2 more apartments right there, but you chose to put a community garden, so I appreciate that.
Right.
That's great.
And those gardens get used.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Mr. Langstaff,
Nothing further.
Ms. Young.
Nothing further.
Yes, Mr. Donnelly, the one thing, I was looking at some demographic information, and I think the city of Albany, 15% of our residents are 65 and older compared to the national average, which is about 10%. So, but I was just looking at the diagram, it looks like from Old Dawson Road, you'd see the detention pond. And I was just talking about some barrier, but vegetative, if we're talking about a buffer, a vegetative barrier might be more appealing, but that's just my thought. But if it's not required, it's not required. So, but we appreciate you talking to us, Mr. Donnelly.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Josh Thomason.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Thompson.
I think Bobby and Paul explained everything, so I won't belabor the point this morning and extend your meeting. I just wanted to at least sign up so that I can answer any questions y'all have. Starting off on the buffer on Old Dawson, we're open to adding any condition in there that says we will add evergreens in between Old Dawson and the detention pond. Certainly want to be good neighbors. Folks driving by there and they want to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing, and we'll make sure that happens. Otherwise, like Bobby and Paul mentioned, we developed Point North Senior Village Phase 1 and 2. This will be the 3rd phase. Those 2 are completely full and they stay full. So we don't expect any problem leasing up and staying leased up. And as I briefly mentioned just a moment ago, this development will have its own amenities. So phase 1 has its own amenities, phase 2, and now phase 3. Now, obviously our residents can go between the different phases and use different amenities, but we're providing a whole new set of amenities here, which include a business center, computer center, fitness center, and then just general all-purpose areas, and then obviously the additional community garden for our residents. I'll answer any questions y'all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions, Ms. Howard?
Good morning, Josh. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Let me ask you a question. As Paul has stated and Bobby has stated, and there will be some sidewalks that would eventually, and this is phase 2, right? Phase 3, phase 2?
This is phase 3.
3. And if the sidewalks decide to come out on Old Dawson Road, once phase 3 is complete, do you know approximately how many yards it is from the next street going west? Is it Devon or Devon or whatever?
Typically, when we build a development, you bring a sidewalk out to the right-of-way, and then as soon as you kind of get out into the right-of-way, the length of your property, at that point, you'll install the sidewalk from one side of your property to the other. So eventually, as different properties get developed, and if everyone does that, the sidewalk, it ties in. So it would go from one end of our property line to the other at the end of the day, but in the right-of-way.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Nothing further.
Mr. Fletcher?
No question.
Commissioner Warmington?
So, let me just be clear. So on Old Dawson, you are going to put a sidewalk on Old Dawson?
At least, you know.
From property to property line to
That's
property
right,
line.
correct.
Yeah. I just didn't know what our requirement, because the building technically is facing the other direction. I didn't know if our rules require on the backside of a building, you know, what's required from our ordinance standpoint. But I think it would be great if you would do that on Old Dawson to have and also I think the vegetation buffer would be great. I would recommend that, even though it's not required. So
Yes.
if you would certainly consider that, that would be great. What are your size units? Are you doing like 2-bedroom, 1-bath?
It's a mixture. So it's 80 units. It'd be 60 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and 20 1-bedroom, 1-bath.
Okay. And it's 2-story, 3-story?
It's a 3-story building, so the same. It's essentially just a little bit larger than Point North Senior Village Phase 1 that sits on Point North Boulevard.
Okay. And it's going to be the same look, same architectural appearance?
Yes.
As your other one, so it all kind of tie together?
That's right.
Okay. And then technically your age requirements, is it 65 and older or 55 and older?
It's 55 and older.
55. Okay. All right. That's just good for our community to know.
Sure.
What's available. So that's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young?
Nothing further.
So my thought about the vegetative barrier is just looking at it, you got a lot of residents out there in Northwest Albany, and what keeps coming to mind is we had a Family Dollar on 3rd Avenue, and the back of the building faces the folks who drive on 3rd Avenue, thousands of people a day, and some folks said it's just ghastly to you know, the appearance. You're looking at the back of the building, and that's what it looks like what we have here. So if y'all would consider that, I think that would certainly be beneficial, because after it's constructed and then we have residents complaining about the appearance, it's too late then. But we appreciate you meeting this need in our community, and thank you for being here today.
Thank y'all. Thank you, Mayor.
Next item on the agenda is the presentation on the Southwest Georgia Air Service Development Grant application. Mr. Hamilton, you with us?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
And this is just for information only, not for a grant application, Mayor, just to inform you on a study that was conducted at the airport. A few meetings ago, Commissioner Langstaff requested that I come before this body to talk about previous efforts to attract another air carrier to the Southwest Georgia Regional Airport. And I would like to briefly highlight some of the points of a study conducted by Fixel Consulting Group in 2018 that was presented to the Aviation Board. Next slide, please. The Southwest Georgia Regional Airport currently has daily air service to Atlanta via Delta Airlines, which is operated by Endeavor. Currently, Delta operates 3 flights per day during the weekdays and 2 flights per day on weekends. Prior to COVID-19, Delta was considering adding a 4th flight on daily to the airport. This graph that you see now kind of shows you the impact COVID-19 had on us. In 2019, the airport saw a 5% increase from passengers in 2018. We've consistently been above between 30 and 40,000 passengers since 2000. However, again, the significant drop-off in enplanements was about 50% due to COVID-19. And what you don't see here is the deplanements, which would put us about 90% in reduction in passengers coming in and out of Albany. If you look at the next graph, that shows you our comparison for enplanements with surrounding airports. In 2018, the airport conducted the True Market Leakage Study with Sixel Consulting Group. Leakage refers to people who live in the airport's catchment area but don't use the Southwest Georgia Regional Airport for air travel. The airport's catchment area includes people and households who live closer to the Southwest Georgia Regional Airport than any other commercial service airport. The surrounding airports that impede on our catchment area are Valdosta, Dothan, Columbus, Macon, and Tallahassee. All of these airports are considered primary non-hub airports like Albany. Next slide, please. So what is the catchment area? The catchment area is defined in the 2018 study was a deep dive into the 10 most populous counties around Albany. Of all the counties in the Albany catchment area, Dougherty County has 141,196 passengers. And as you can see there on the information there are other counties considered: Colquitt, Tift, Sumter, Lee, Mitchell, Crisp, Early, and Turner. As far as our leakage rate goes, on the other graph there, from 2018 study, when people in the catchment area don't fly from Albany, they generally fly out of airports that impede on our catchment area. And as you can see, people that don't fly from Albany typically fly from Atlanta, as indicated in the graph. ABY was capturing 14.8% of all in-plane passengers from our catchment area, which means 74% going up to Atlanta and flying. Essentially, for every one passenger from Albany catchment area that departs from Albany, 6 more are flying to out of other airports. Next slide. So this graph kind of gives you a cost comparison to leaked airports. Comparison analysis involves the use of a metric known as passengers per day each way. This number is a reflection of all air passengers with credit card data tied to the Albany catchment area who are arriving and departing at surrounding airports. Effectively, the metric shows how many people from Albany catchment area are utilizing air travel each day and what airports they are using. In 2018, there was a daily average of 703 people from the Albany catchment area. Of those, ABY captured 104 passengers per day each way compared to the 521 captured by Atlanta. And the graph at the bottom there basically shows you where people were flying to. Next slide. So what have Albany done in the past? Well, based on the 2018 study, we looked at pursuing a small community air service development grant to provide services with American Airlines to Charlotte, North Carolina. A presentation was developed by Sixel outlining the benefits of service from Albany to Charlotte on American Airlines. In this presentation, they highlight some of the things that Southwest Georgia have to offer. They highlight this presentation was given to American Airlines. And in the bullet points there show some of the things that they talked about. In particular, the Marine Corps base, Cheehaw Park, among other things listed. But in doing so, at an average fare of $123.74, American Airlines stood to generate about $16.6 million in direct flight revenue, with additional revenue coming from connections. What does the market look like now? Airlines now have numerous concerns with the impact of COVID-19, what it has done to the aviation industry. Since COVID, the market has catered to most of business travelers. To stay solvent, airlines are looking for new customers outside the business market and have placed a large emphasis on leisure travelers. Location primarily for leisure travel, such as Las Vegas, has become more ideal for new air routes compared to slower growth of business travel, such as New York or Boston. So if Albany desires to add additional service, the location chosen will need to do a few different things as listed below. Any new route established by Albany will need to serve a location known for leisure and business, and not just strictly business. The airline will need to have significant potential to capture lead passengers per day each way through connections to other airports and airline services. The airline will need to be interested in developing that particular hub city, be within a reachable range for aircraft used by the airlines or regional carriers, be a top location with significant passengers per day each way in an update to the 2018 information, and come with a financial incentive known as revenue guarantee. Next slide. So there are two grants out there that the airport could consider, the Small Community Air Service Development Program grant and the Essential Air Service Program grant. The Small Community Air Service Development Program, which is known as SCASD, is a U.S. Department of Transportation grant that is designed to help small communities address air service and airfare issues. Is managed by the Associated Director of Small Community Air Service Development under the Office of Aviation Analysis. SCASD can involve, among others, revenue guarantees, financial assistance for marketing programs, startup costs, and studies. Only public entities may apply for and serve as the legal sponsor of the grant under the Small Community Program. The Essential Air Service Grant Program, which is a less competitive grant than the SCASD program grant. The Essential Air Service Grant does not provide much competition. In other words, if you get this grant will subsidize the operations of an airline. So if you have an airline that is operating at risk and their competitors is then 100% subsidized, and they would not, essentially pack their bags and leave. So that is not typically the grant that you would want to get. Next slide, please. So things to consider for future air service development. If Albany wants to see expanded services, especially if the airport applies for a grant or a community to provide funds to port and airlines, the following items need to be considered to ensure the City of Albany and Southwest Georgia Regional Airport are in current position to receive expanded services. We need to update the air service development study. We can begin communications with airlines to gauge interest in beginning route development. We can meet with community businesses to see what their needs are and how airport routes can better serve or grow their business. Seek congressional approval for grant applications. Seek supplemental supporting documentation from interested airlines for grant applications. Seek out assistance from desired airport air service development team as well as supporting documentation, and submit the appropriate paperwork for grant programs. This could be a lengthy process to take up to 3 years. That is the end of my presentation. For any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Mr. Howard, any questions?
No question at this time.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
Yes, good morning. Have we seen any pickup starting in 2021 of more flights now that obviously COVID is still going on, but now that people are getting vaccines, and are we seeing more passengers from last year?
Well, right now, planes are only being used at 60% capacity, so that's about 30 people per flight. We have seen a little bit more activity in recent months, but Delta has not utilize the full plane capacity this year.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Ms. Fletcher?
No questions. Thank you, David, for all the work that you do.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Warburton?
Yeah, no questions.
Mr. Langstaff?
Yeah, David, can you flip back to page 4 of your presentation?
Yeah, Tax is controlling that for me. Page 4.
Yeah, it may not be necessary. I'll just tell you what I thought I saw. It said that we did not apply for the grant.
Yeah, we did not apply, and if you recall, Commissioner, when Pixel came in to do the presentation, he indicated that American Airlines at that time did not want to come into this area. They didn't see anything profitable in assuming that they didn't want to come into this area. So we did not apply for the grant for those reasons. Typically, when you apply for those grants, in particular the SCASB grant, you have something in the pipeline that could give you a better opportunity to get that grant because it's more competitive. You have 3 years to use the funds.
That makes perfect sense with what I'm reading online. It appears that Valdosta partnered with American Airlines to get service to Charlotte, and as part of their grant application, American submitted a letter of intent to do the new route. I mean, that doesn't mean they're going to get the grant, but
right.
For whatever reason, American thought Valdosta to Charlotte made more sense than Albany to Charlotte, or it could be a different, it's a different time. They're applying, but they just applied. They should hear at the end of the summer whether they got it. But to me, it makes sense to reopen the channel with American. If at least they're shopping around. If it doesn't work out with Valdosta, if they don't get the grant, maybe they could get the grant with us.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
That's all I got. Thanks for the presentation.
Ms. Young?
Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Hamilton. Can you tell me, I guess, in terms of, selection of routes, a little bit how that process works? We do know that, in Albany, Georgia, you pretty much got to go through Atlanta to get to heaven. So, has there been any, work on, I heard you talk about route development to, routes outside of going to Atlanta, maybe going to, west to, New Orleans or Biloxi or south, directly to Miami, things like that, and do any other airports our size and within our region serve other routes than just going primarily to Atlanta. And I guess with particular focus on Valdosta, because I think, and I don't know, Mr. Langstaff may weigh on this, what precipitated this was a question I had asked based on, I guess, a news story that, Valdosta's airport was either looking or actually going to expand their service to other areas besides Atlanta.
Okay, well, typically, the airports, do try to contact other airlines to look at other routes other than Atlanta. And all the airports in our region, you're correct, we all fly direct to Atlanta and disperse in other places. American Airlines at the time was what Sixel recommended for us. Again, that was back in 2018. Typically, also, you don't have the airlines fly. Delta doesn't come here and fly. They send, they have a connecting flight with Endeavor. So those smaller jets have to be able to fly somewhere, typically less than 500 miles. They don't like to refuel. So they try to stay within a 500-mile range. So you look for routes that meet that criteria. You mentioned Miami. I believe Miami is just under that 500 miles. I think they're about 450 miles from Albany. But when we solicit other air carriers, definitely we try to look at where their regional jets can fly to when we think about routes. So there's, I think in our study done in 2018, we looked at flying from Albany to Dallas, and the other one was Charlotte, and also I believe Miami. And there were several others that were in this study itself. So, but that's typically how they determine what routes they want to take.
So they, who you specifically speaking of?
They get in the airlines, airports. Yeah, the airlines, not the airports. I mean, the airports solicit the carrier. The carrier, they'll look at your location of your airport, and then look at proximity of other destinations, preferred destinations by travelers, to see if their regional jets could make it, and if it makes sense from a business standpoint. And obviously, they want to be profitable.
Okay. So my questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a request first. Mr. Hamilton, on the second page of the presentation, you have passenger employment since 2010. Could you provide us with a graph of statistics of arrivals and departures all the way back to 1970? I remember even in the 80s, we had 2 Eastern flew out of here and ASA, and I understand that back in the day, Republic had flights to other towns. I assume people.
Yes, sir. I'll do what I can to find that data. I'm not sure if we have it. I'll certainly put staff on it. We'll get researching and I'll try to provide whatever we come up with.
All right. This catchment area, I don't know if I agree with the methodology. I think you'd be safer if you just took a 45-mile circumference of Albany, because you get beyond that and you're closer to Macon and Columbus. Early counties closer to Dothan and Valdosta and Tallahassee. But be that as it may, this graph on page 3, is that telling us that 74% of the people who took flights from what's defined as the catchment area flew out of Atlanta as opposed to Albany?
That is correct, sir. It's telling us that we're losing, they call it leakage. Our passengers are driving to Atlanta, or our potential passengers are driving to Atlanta to fly from Atlanta as opposed to flying from Albany.
Okay. I know there was a time where the cancellation rate got kind of high, and certain people, I remember our minister was going, he's from California, he and his wife, and they missed their connection in Atlanta. It was a pretty bad situation. I don't think that has to happen to people but once, and they decide they'll not risk it. But with that, Ms. Hamilton, yeah, if you could get us that information, and like I say, I'd like to know just for my own edification, because clearly we have fewer people flying out of Albany, and I would think that's probably true for non-hub airports all over the country. I may be wrong, but if we could get that information, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Next item, moving to public safety matters, alcohol application for 2801 North Slappy Boulevard, seeking a license full package, liquor, beer, and wine. Mr. Norman?
Good morning. This is J.K. Chevi Incorporation, doing business as J&J Liquor Store at 2801 North Slappy Boulevard, has submitted an application for an alcohol license for packaged liquor, beer, and wine. The applicant is Jadish and Jatirda Patel from 101 Fowler Drive in Leesburg, Georgia. The local agent is Orville Moulton at 3110 Greystone Lane, apartment 2705 here in Albany, Georgia. This type of business is a package store. The planning department identified the location zone as C3 on an arterial street and in Ward 2. The distance requirement from the nearest school is Northside Elementary School at 901 14th Avenue. It's over 5,000 feet. The nearest church is Hope City United at 1501 Sly Avenue at over 2,000 feet. And the nearest package store is Ace Liquors at 2412 North Slappy Boulevard, and it's also over 2,000 feet. The establishment previously at this location was a Renaissance Bank. The last year recalled is 2006. The police department has no open investigations on this location. Police calls over the past 36 months. There was 1 motor vehicle theft, there was 1 drug offense, 2 false alarms, and 4 miscellaneous. The applicant placed an article in the Albany Herald at least 10 days prior to this meeting as notification to the general public that this application would be considered for approval. The applicant and the location meet the criteria.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Any questions? Ms. Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir. Are they gonna plan to renovate this building or tear it down and build a new building?
I'm not sure exactly what their intentions are. But there was some conversations about utilizing the drive-through. So whether they're going to demolish the whole building and start over, I'm not sure, but they did indicate that they wanted to have a drive-through at that location.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Fletcher?
No question.
Commissioner Warmington?
Yeah, no questions.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young?
Good morning, Mr. Norman.
Good morning.
Can you tell me how, how you have any data on how many other alcohol outlets are in the general vicinity of this location and maybe their proximity?
Okay, across the street is an Inmark. They have packaged beer and wine. To the right, approximately 1,000 yards is a Flash Food. Before you get to the Flash Food is Walmart. Ace Liquors is at that corner. Walgreens is on the other side of Palmyra. And Food Lion is across the street from Red Lobster. And if you keep going south, you're going to have the Smoke and Tobacco Shop. It's going to be on the right. There's another store right there at the corner of Nottingham and Whispering Pines and Slappy. Continuing south, you're going to have Pig and Whistle at 9th Avenue. You're going to have Woodall's at 8th Avenue. You have J&M on the other side of 8th Avenue. Continuing south, you should have, I think that's about as far as I can go before you get to Pine Avenue and Dawson Road.
Okay. And I guess, can we say, well, I count from what you just named, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 alcohol outlets that you mentioned. Can you give me just a rough, just out of your mind, you don't have to be exact, but just out of your mind, how many of those outlets are within I guess, a 2 or 3 block radius
We have the end mark.
in either direction?
The end mark is across the street. Going south, you have the Flash Food, and you have Walmart, and they are approximately 1,500 feet. And then, like I said, you have Walgreens, that's going to be probably around 1,700 feet. And Harvey's is going to be about 2,000.
What about, you said, I know you mentioned the Ace Liquors, how far is that?
Right, that's going to be across the street from the Walgreens, so you're about 1,700 feet.
So it's within that radius as well,
Yes, sir.
2 or 3 blocks?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that should put the Red Lobster in there as well, right?
Yes, sir, that's on-premise consumption, it is. But then also would be Ajax Restaurant, and then you get down to Sonny's. Then you're going to start extending you outside of that 3-4 block radius.
Okay, all right. And we still don't have any ordinances or conditions that you consider in terms of the number of alcohol outlets and the, you know, proximity of these outlets in your approval process? These are not things that you consider?
Not for package sales, sir. Only for on-premise consumption.
Okay. All right, that's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Norman, I just had a question. I remember some months back, we were talking, so an applicant comes to you and makes payment of the application, or comes to the marshal's office and makes payment of the application. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you told us that if the application was denied, that money was refunded to the applicant.
When they come to the office, they pay an application fee for the processing of the license. And we require for them to bring a cashier's check money order for the entire amount of the license. If the license is denied, then they receive that portion back.
Okay. Well, brings me to my question. On our presentations, we have alcohol license application, and what I'm seeing here, a package store to sell liquor, beer, and wine, they have to pay what we say is an application of $3,775. That's really the license fee, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what would be the application fee?
$50.
$50.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I think that's sort of misleading. We might want to correct that on the and just alcohol license, and then just put nature, because these people, the application fee is $50, and it looks like it's $3,775, and as we've clarified today, that's actually the fee for the license.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Norman. And Mr. Norman's going to be with us for a while. We have the next 4 items are request to transfer license. Excuse me? The next
I
is
have one more thing for Mr. Norman.
Sir? Sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I have one more thing for Mr. Norman.
Oh, I thought you said you finished. Okay.
Yes, sir, I did. I just thought about it.
Okay.
Mr. Norman, is it possible that you can get with possibly Mr. Forgy from the Planning Commission to possibly start some GIS data regarding our alcohol outlets?
Yes,
so
sir.
We can start seeing maybe some maps in your presentation?
Yes, sir. That can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is a application to transfer the license at 2310 North Slappy Boulevard. That is Food Lion LLC, the applicant.
Yep, Food Lion LLC, doing business as Food Lion, store number 2818 at 2310 North Slappy Boulevard, has submitted an application for a transfer of the alcohol license for packaged beer and wine. The applicant is Jason L. Wilson at 198 Anson Drive in China Grove, North Carolina. The local agent is Robert W. Keyes at 208 North Hibiscus Road here in Albany. The type of business is a supermarket. The planning department identified this location as zoned in C3 and on Arterial Street and in Ward 2. There are no distance requirements, but the nearest school is Northside Elementary and the nearest church is Albany Gospel Chapel. The establishment was previously licensed by Harvey Supermarket number 1648 from 2004 to 2021. The police has no open investigations at this location. The police calls over the past 12 months, there were 9 property crimes, 3 disorderly conducts, 41 building checks, 2 false alarms, and 80 miscellaneous. The applicant placed an article in the Albany Herald at least 10 days prior to this meeting as notification to the general public that this application would be considered. The applicant and the location meets the criteria.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Commissioner Howard, any questions?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No question.
Commissioner Fletcher.
No question.
Commissioner Warmington.
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No question.
Commissioner Young.
No question.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. The next item on the agenda is a request for a transfer of license, yet again for Food Lion. This is at the grocery store at 1511 Radium Springs Road. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Food Lion LLC, doing business as Food Lion number 2819 at 1511 Radium Springs, has submitted an application for transfer of the existing alcohol license for packaged beer and wine. Jason L. Wilson, 198 Anson Drive, China Grove, North Carolina, and the local agent is Robert W. Keyes at 208 North Hibiscus here in Albany. The type of business is a supermarket. The planning department identified this location as zoned in C7 and on Ontario Street and in Ward 6. There are no distance requirements for transfer. However, the nearest school is Morningside Elementary, and the nearest church is First Monumental Missions. The establishment was previously licensed as Harvey Supermarket number 1649 from 1988 to 2021. The police department has no open investigations at this location. Police calls for service over 12 months, 17 property crimes, 6 disorderly conducts, 83 building checks, 1 false alarm, and 40 miscellaneous. The applicant placed an article in the Albany Herald at least 10 days prior to this meeting as notification to the general public that the application would be considered. The applicant and the location meets the criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Commissioner Howard.
No question at this time.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No question.
Commissioner Fletcher.
No question.
Commissioner Warmington.
Yeah, Mr. Norman, just refresh, so the agent needs to be in the city limits or just Doherty County?
The agent just need to be in Doherty County.
Just in the county?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No questions.
Commissioner Young.
No question.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. The next application is for transfer of license at 2211 North Slappy Boulevard.
Yes, sir. SMP Diana Incorporation at Slappy Smoke Shop has submitted an application for transfer of the existing alcohol license for packaged beer and wine. The applicant is J. Kumar V. Patel, 1447 U.S. Highway 19 South, Leesburg, Georgia. The local agent is John Brennan at 2517 West Alberson Drive here in Albany, Georgia. The type of business is a convenience store. The planning department identified this location as Zone C3 on Arterial Street and in Ward 3. There are no distance requirements for transfers. The nearest school is Northside Elementary at 901 14th, and the nearest church is Albany Gospel. The establishment was previously licensed as Slappy Food and Tobacco Mart from 2018 to 2021. The police department has no open investigations at this location. Police calls over the past 12 months, there were 17 property, 6 disorderly conducts, 83 building checks, 1 false alarm, and 40 miscellaneous. The applicant placed an article in the Albany Herald at least 10 days prior to this meeting as notification to the general public that this application would be considered for approval. The applicant and location meets the criteria.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Any questions? Commissioner Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No questions.
Commissioner Warmington?
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young?
No question.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Finally, Ms. Norman, request for transfer of beer and wine license at 2400 Clark Avenue.
Yes, sir. The Albany Convenience Store LLC, doing business as Albany Convenience Store at 2400 Clark Avenue. Staff requests that this application be postponed to next month as a convenience to the applicant.
Okay, as a request to postpone the application.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that, thank you, Ms. Norman.
Yes, sir.
Next item on the agenda is a proposal to consider a contract with Luce Design of Lawrenceville, Georgia, to develop the recreation master plan for a total cost of $113,000. Ms. Fields, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Is Mr. Potter with us?
Mr. Potter is out of town, but he is monitoring this meeting.
Okay. All right, Ms. Fields, you have the floor.
Good morning again. This is a recommendation to consider Luce Design to develop the recreation master plan for a total cost of $113,000. This RFP was advertised in all of our regular outlets. We received responses from 10 quality firms, and the proposals were evaluated by an evaluation team. Our recommendation is Luce Design. We checked references for Luce, and we got good feedback from all of the references. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Any questions for Ms. Fields? Commissioner Howard?
No question from Ms. Fields at the time.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Nope.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No comment.
Commissioner Warmington?
Yes, got a couple of questions, Ms. Fields. The proposer wood, what was their price?
Wood price, I believe, was about $79,000 or $84,000, one of those two. believe it was 84.
Okay, so almost $30,000 cheaper. So,
Yes, sir, but
so is it, I guess, the evaluator's opinion that the quality of the two responses, that it's worth $30,000 more? When you look at the points, they got two more points.
yes, sir, that's how the RFP process works, that the price is not the sole determining factor. And we felt like Luce brought a little bit more to the table than Wood did.
Okay. And then when y'all did in-person, so did you do in-person interviews with just the top contractor or with all of them?
We did not do interviews.
Oh, there were no, you just checked references. You didn't do any follow-up person-to-person interviews?
Because we've had experience with both of the firms, we did not do any interviews.
Okay, so we've had experience with Wood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just know Lowe's because of their recent work on Driscoll Park. So, okay, that's it, Mayor. Thanks.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
No question.
I just want to say, I guess my time's up. I was looking at this. What I would like to propose, and if there's no interest in the commission, there's no interest. But when you have these proposals, I mean, this is a very important undertaking. I have spent the last few weeks summarizing the past master plans. We're going to talk about it at the retreat this weekend. I would suggest that when we are undertaking a plan like this, that it might be advisable for the commission, or at least a committee, if the full commission is not interested, to sit down with the top proposers and conduct these interviews. And don't get me wrong, I'm very impressed with what Mr. Bond and Luce Design has done, but here we got a proposal. There's less than 2 points separating the top two proposals. I just think the city commission should undertake to interview the proposers before the contract is awarded. The same thing, I went back 2 weeks ago. Lord, Eck, and Sargent was 94, and Design Workshop was again less than 2 points behind. TSW was less than 3 points. I mean, if there's no interest, there's no interest. But as far as, we're talking about a recreation master plan 2 weeks ago, and here we are talking about a recreation master plan that I think is going to impact this city, if it's successful, for decades. I just think it would be prudent for the commission to be engaged, and this certainly isn't minimizing what the PAG's done. The PAG has basically solicited the proposals and identified the most qualified firms. Otherwise, the commission has no involvement until the plan's underway. So if I could poll the commission to see if there's an interest in the commission interviewing the top applicants. If there's not, there's not. And the two options would be the full commission has interviews, and we can do it by Zoom. That's the way everything's being conducted now, so folks wouldn't have to come down to Albany if they didn't want to. And the commissioners could attend or participate. The first option is the full commission. Second option is just a committee. So, Commissioner Howard, you got any thoughts on that?
I think it'd give us some flexibility, and I can agree with your assessment.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I would, at this point, I would say no. I feel like that we might be, I don't know, it could be a conflict of interest in some regards. I would say no at this point.
Okay. Commissioner Fletcher?
Well, Mayor, I would say no also. We have looking at the team of people that, looked at this proposal and brought these people to the table. We've got to have confidence in our city manager and all of the department heads, and I just think that it's a form of micromanaging, and so I say no. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, Mayor, I would say yes, and the reason would be, our spending approval limit is $100,000. So anytime that, we're gonna weigh in on a decision like that, even on something like this, a $30,000 difference, I think we owe it fiduciary responsibility to understand the 30,000, and I think sometimes in an in-person interview, you might can understand where the 30,000 difference. The other bid, I was surprised that it was a fixed amount. So even that would be something that, as a commission, the $103,000 for the downtown master plan, we gave them the budget, so everybody bid the same price. So again, trying to understand, someone may say, hey, we could do it less. I don't know if they were given the option to bid less, but everybody bid $103,000. But again, it's at the same ballpark price as this item. So yeah, I would think as a commission, some or all or a few of us could provide some extra oversight and questions to make a decision.
Commissioner Langstaff?
I'm a no.
Okay. Commissioner Young?
Am I correct in remembering that the city manager offered to put a commission member on the PAG committee, or do we already have that person on that?
No, I had mentioned that at a previous meeting, and then I talked to Ms. Fields, some other people. I guess I understand why that would not be a sound procedure. The reason being, if Commissioner Smith was on the committee and his or her favorite was fourth down the list, then you're going to have Commissioner Smith, a good possibility, arguing that the fourth proposer is really the best. Also the commissioner would have been involved in a previous stage of the selection process. So that was just a suggestion that I had made, and it was not a good one, I guess.
So I guess my next question is, how would this be any different?
This is going to be different because the commission is actually going to be involved. I mean, it's not that, just for explanation, I don't see it any way as a conflict of interest. And the PAG has gone through the process, solicited and reviewed the proposals, and identified the most qualified proposers. Actually, the city commission is hiring these folks. So you have the responsibility, but if we just kind of mechanically accept the the top firm through the PAG, you're not really involved in the process, and you haven't. So that's how it's different.
Okay. So you're saying you didn't agree with the assessment that it's a conflict of interest to have a commissioner on the PAG?
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a conflict of interest, but I could see why it's not good policy. And
You know, I do understand what you're saying, Mayor. And I probably would like some oversight on, in terms of anything that's procurement, but, I guess I'm, you know, just trying to just figure out where the ethical bounds are, you know, because you're saying, okay, we should have some input, but we can't be a part of the PAG. I'm just, that's kind of a little ambivalent to me. If we're gonna have some input, it should be at the selection process, because it seems like what you're asking is that we do have some input of the selection process if we are in on these interviews, or otherwise we just listening to interviews for no reason.
No, I think we're not on the.
You get what I'm saying?
I think we're not on the same page. What I'm saying, Commissioner Young, is the city commission would say, we're going to take the top 2 or the top 3 proposals and we're going to schedule interviews. And then if you have a committee, that committee would make the recommendation. We agree that Lord Eck and Sargent, or we agree that Lowson Wood is the best proposal. Whereas if through the interview process, the committee said, we recommend TSW design, as opposed to Lord Eck and Sargent to do the downtown master plan, then the commission would vote on it. And if 4 commissioners don't agree with the committee, well then the proposal, the firm recommended by the PAG gets it. But what I'm saying is, otherwise, let's remember, the city is ultimately responsible for the firm that's selected. And I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I've got a stack, I think, of 7 master plans for downtown Albany since ATI. We don't have the money to do any physical construction, so we get another master plan. Well, I think if we're going to serve the citizens of this community, we have to have a realistic plan. Commissioner Warburton mentioned one of these firms being less than the other ones. That wouldn't be my primary concern, because if we had a master plan we got for $45,000, you know, if it's not something that's going to help us, we'd have been better off to made the investment on the front end. So, but I just feel like, since the commission is ultimately responsible, that the commission should actively interview proposals, and you don't have to do it every time. If the commission side, we don't want to do it, but here we're talking about, in the last 2 weeks, the downtown master plan and now the recreation plan. And if we can all agree on one thing, we know our recreation department is not fulfilling its mission in the way that most citizens would expect. So that's.
Well, I guess I'm just talking about the overall process, the overall procurement process. You know, I do agree with you. I would rather have, you know, some input before, you know, something is selected for us to vote on and ratify, or maybe we get a chance to look at the goods beforehand, or some type of internal look at the process. But again, it's kind of ambivalent to me, but I'll vote yes.
Okay, I would say yes as well. And could we line up interviews, Ms. Field, with the top 2 proposals for the downtown master plan and the top 2 proposals for the recreation master plan? Okay. With that, well, we will talk this weekend about who's going to serve on the who's willing to serve on the committees. And
Mayor, can I say something, please?
yes, ma'am.
Now this is just sort of what I thought of when Mr. Mathis got up and spoke, this morning, one of the first things he said was, well, I already know that there's 4 votes. And then there was a comment made that could have led somebody to believe that there was some little inside stuff going on with that. This is just my opinion. So I surely don't want anybody to come out here and say BJ said, but that was just sort of what I thought. And I would like to just get our city attorney to weigh in on this, because I don't want to see any of us do anything that, I could very easily see if we start looking at these proposals, and I think I'm saying this to try to protect all of us. So I'd like to see Nathan weigh in and ask, is this something that we should do? Thank you, sir.
Okay, but wait now, I don't think we need to be asking Mr. Davis something we should do. Obviously, if you have some concerns, and I believe you do, Commissioner Fletcher, about the legality, that would be what we'll ask Mr. Davis. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis, is there any legal issue or problem that would be created by the City Commission being involved in evaluating the very firms that they would hire?
No, sir. Our office doesn't see any issues on that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, Ms. Fields, if you can line that up, we appreciate it.
Mayor, with that being said, I doubt we'll be able to have that by next Tuesday for our voting meeting, which probably indicates we'll probably need to table both of them, which would be obvious if we didn't have the interviews done, but I'm just going to mention that.
That's understood. Commissioner Warmington pointed out that we wouldn't be able to vote on these 2 issues in all probability at the monthly meeting next Tuesday. Thank you, Ms. Field.
Thank you.
The next item.
This is Stephen Carter. Could I ask a question before we move on?
Who is this?
Stephen Carter.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Carter. Yes, sir.
Sir, do you have a list of the ones that you want to have interviewed, so as we make contact, we know who we're trying to contact for you?
Sir?
Do you know the ones that you want to interview, or do you want to view all of them?
No. Oh, no. That's what, I mean, we were just talking about interviewing the top 2 proposals.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. With that, next item on the agenda is a proposal to contract the remaining self-performed portions of solid waste collection with the current contractor. Mr. Stock, Mr. Rowe? Okay, but
Mayor, Commission, good morning.
could I, before you take the floor, this is a item that was discussed at the utility board previously in the history here, but for the benefit of those watching at home, the city provides sanitation collection east of Slappy Drive. We have a private contractor and have had since the 90s, I believe, who collects household garbage west of Slappy Drive. And this is a proposal to enter into a contract with a private vendor for the service citywide. So, Mr. Stock, you have the floor.
Yep, thank you, sir. Thank you for the lead-in. So this is an item that was requested and recommended by the utility board at their February 25th meeting. Next slide, please. So the history behind this is that in December, city staff brought to the utility board the recommendation for the purchase of 6 new grapple trucks for an expenditure of just under $1.1 million. In light of that expense and the fact that the contractor for solid waste was doing exceptionally well, or is doing exceptionally well, the utility board requested that an analysis be performed on having the contractor provide those services to the entire city versus expending this $1.1 million. And so the option one looked at would be, to have the city continue to provide those services at the same standard of service that's being provided by the contractor. And option two is to contract out, all residential solid waste. In either option, the city would continue to serve the commercial customers, going forward. Next slide, please. So when we looked at the financial analysis of each of those scenarios, you can see that the net income difference is just around $200,000. You can see that the assumptions include the institution of a new rate, that depreciation and operational cost of the new equipment is included. The analysis does not include, or this analysis right here in this table does not include the cost of capital of the nearly $3 million that would be necessary. And then, but depreciation is covered. Next slide, please. So the cost of that financing for that nearly $2.8 million would be principal interest payments. Actually, it's not interest. It's basically zero interest. 5-year term would be $550,000 to purchase that equipment. Again, this is zero interest. I know a lease payment was mentioned earlier. Lease payment would likely actually be higher, but was not considered. Next slide, please. So this is just the same chart, but with the cost of financing included. You can see that the $200,000 difference now climbs to about $750,000. Next slide, please. So in summary, for the commercial operations, the city again would continue to supply all commercial operations, which include the roll-off service, includes dumpster collection, barrel collection at commercial customers, also includes servicing the Marine Corps base and the school district. And you can see that that's about 1,453 accounts. Next slide, please. We did a survey to see what other cities are doing as far as their solid waste collection. And you can see from those we contacted that the majority have contractor provided service. We actually had a late edition Macon. They're also contractor provided. Next slide, please. So it's been brought up, and we were very aware that we needed to take a look and see what the employee impact would be. So under the city's current operations, there are 36 full-time employees that are assigned to solid waste collection. Under the contractor option, that number would drop to 19 because it would still be, city would still be providing the commercial services, which is a difference of 17 positions. One of the other reasons to look at this now, besides just the equipment issue, is the fact that we'd had 2 recent retirements of basically the 2 most senior employees in the solid waste division retired in February, prompting us to again take a further closer look at these operations. So with the contracting out operations, like I said, the city would retain 19 positions serving commercial accounts, supervision, administration, and litter crews, which would be a reduction of 17 positions. However, of those 17, 9 are already currently vacant. So there would be 8 employees who would need to be reassigned, and Public Works has well over 8 open vacancies that these employees could be reassigned to. So bottom line is there will be 0 layoffs, 0 terminations, 0 employee impact. Next slide, please. The pros and cons of leaving it as it is: if we continue the city providing the service on half and the contractor can supply in the other side, one would argue that the pro is control over the solid waste collection process. Rather than use the word control, I would use the word flexibility. The cons, of course, would be that you have this large capital expenditure. There's an estimated loss of a net financial position. We have to implement technology. We would maintain the cost associated with the risk, all of the fleet costs, and the disparity of service between the different areas within the city. Next slide, please. So the pros and cons of outsourcing. If we outsource the pros, would be that we'd have consistent standard service across the entire city. It eliminates the confusion we have at times that are caused by the separate service areas. We would have reduced capital costs, reduced risk, and reduction in long-term obligations. The cons would be relying on one contractor. There would be significant lead time if we decided to bring the service back in-house, and we would have some susceptibility to contractor operating issues. Next slide, please. So we looked at some what-ifs. What if the federal or state government increases minimum wage? Well, if that happens, it affects both scenarios. What if fuel pricing increases? Well, we're already kind of seeing that, and that would definitely impact the city option and potentially impact the contractor option. And then the big what if is, what if the contractor would suddenly cease providing services, or if the city would get hit by another serious storm event? So the city, again, like I've explained, the city will retain all commercial accounts and continue to provide service to all commercial customers. In doing so, we have all of the necessary resources to continue to supply service to the city. We wouldn't be able to supply it at the same, once a week pickup. Might be a little bit of a delay in that until full services are restored, but we would be able to continue to pick up trash. We also maintain an emergency contract with Saris to provide emergency yard and storm debris collection. We could make that call immediately. And then Fleet maintains contacts for emergency rental of heavy equipment such as the rear loaders, grapple trucks, dump trucks, trailers, whatever we would need. And the city has a plethora of licensed operators that can be reassigned temporarily to restore service. Next slide, please. So with that, we will entertain your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stock. Mr. Rhodes, you have anything to add, or are you just here to answer questions?
I'm here to answer any questions, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the presenters? Commissioner Howard.
Good morning, Mr. Stocks. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you, Commissioner.
Let me ask you a point-blank question based on that this contract we have for the west side was approved, and they start as of October 1st, 2020. And who idea it was that within 6 or 7 months of the contract that this proposal came up to contract the east side of Slappy and to let it be let to Concrete Enterprise?
It was at the recommendation of the utility board, sir.
Other than what you showed on the PowerPoint, and I have some concern, and I will always probably have some concern, is that since this came to the recommendation of the utility board, was it in discussion as of last year when we decided that we was going to look for contract with Concrete Enterprise?
I guess, can you rephrase your question, sir?
I mean, you said this came to utility board. I'm pretty sure it just did not come to utility board as of last month. It had to be some discussion in the past.
Yes, sir. It came back in December when we brought the equipment issue forward.
Okay, and another question, since you mentioned about the cost of these knuckle boomers and grapple trucks, is it true that the city could lease some of their property from GMA lease pool?
I'm not familiar with that program. However, the financial analysis includes a 0% interest, and leasing is obviously not a 0% interest option. Therefore, leasing option would likely be higher, but if it's the desire of the commission to have us take a look at that, we're happy to do so.
Okay, and you also mentioned about the reduction of employees from go down from 36 to 19 under consideration that I'm pretty sure that was looking at some of the senior employees that had 20 or 25 years that could retire and sometime make an adjustment to a private contractor would really create a morale issue or low performance?
That was never a consideration of ours, sir. Our only consideration was retaining all employees' jobs.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, when you go around the table, I need to ask you a question as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, sir, Mr. Stock, didn't you say in the presentation that there would be a net loss of 0 jobs? Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. That was absolutely important and imperative to us that no employee be impacted as a result of this, no current employee be impacted as a result of this decision.
Okay. And Mr. Mathis, when he spoke earlier, he was saying something about tracking devices. I'm assuming he probably was referring to the chips that are in the cans that help keep track of the can itself. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I would also assume that that's what he was referring to. And that helps the process to become much, much more efficient. Right now, we track everything. The city side tracks everything, tracks routes on paper.
Right, and so this would be a digital, something that you could look at on a computer and be able to tell where the cans are if someone's can has been stolen or missing.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, if one comes up missing, our only option is simply to replace it. And those cans have value. So every time you just go throwing one around, you're 40, 50 bucks.
Sure. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Yes, sir. A couple of things. One, I like the chip because right off the bat when this company come about, and I had a very irate customer, and Mr. Rowe had to go with me to stand shore up down his fast wasn't getting picked up, and because of that chip, we were able to give them facts, and I will tell you, my life has been easier with this contract. I don't know how the vote is going to go, but I would like to say that this week will be my 3rd week of Operation Clean Sweep, and it has been remarkable in response from the constituents. They love it, and if there's a possibility that we do have some people left, a lot of these people in Clean Sweep are quitting operations, and I'm sure Stacey Rowe could probably use them in some of these buildings that we have, burnt buildings, houses, etc. Maybe we could create a temporary field where we could use them to get ahead of this, because code enforcement and a lot of the work is lagging. So thank you, everything, Ken. That was a great presentation.
Yes,
Commissioner
ma'am.
Warburton?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Stott, so when this bid was put out, I guess October, in the fall of last year, was it a requirement that we add the technology that they've added when we bid that project out?
It was not a requirement, but it was certainly a consideration of what we were looking for. Just because we had so many issues prior, exactly as Commissioner Fletcher has identified.
Okay. My input would be having that my entire ward is on the west side of Slappy. The number of phone calls, the number of messages, the number of times that I'm texting Mr. Rowe, I'm sure he's can attest to this, is almost 0 now. And, part of it is due to the contractor. They come, but part of it, I believe, is to this technology that's being used. And so when I think of the city of Albany as a whole, I actually think it's somewhat unfair to the citizens on the east side of Slappy that the technology, and I know the speaker this morning was somewhat negative about technology, but we all have cell phones and iPhones and various technology we use. This is a technology that I believe allows whoever's picking up, whether it's city employees or a contractor, it allows for a better service. And so with what I'm seeing and hearing, and even the couple of times that citizens have called, you know, hey, my garbage hadn't been picked up, my can, within minutes, they can tune in to their reports and their chips from the cans and the cameras, and instead of it being a he said, she said, technology confirms, yes, that can was picked up, or yes, that can was not picked up. So part of this, you know, one of the things I would say is whatever we make with this decision here, this technology has got to go to the east side. And I would say any commissioner on the east side of Slappy ought to be asking, when can this technology be expanded? So I think in your financial analysis, I think you are correct in including this technology because it needs to be. I mean, we're in the 21st century here. And so it is, I think there was some criticism around the technology, but I believe it's imperative, and I think that's part of it. And I appreciate this vendor. They're the ones that brought this to the table. That they kind of stepped the game up, if you will. And so we really need to step up the game in the rest of the city. One question I did have, so back to the slide of the investment. So the trucks we were, and I guess this was in our budget. This was a budgeted item. This was a planned item that we were going to buy $1 million worth of equipment.
Yes, sir. The grapple trucks had got worn out during the multiple storm events that the city had prior to my arrival, and so all of these grapple trucks are experiencing high maintenance costs. So it's definitely time for replacement, and that's why they were brought forward.
Okay. And so to respond to the criticism of this starting at the utility board, so whether you're buying a bucket truck for the light department or you're buying something for the water department, here we are buying something for the solid waste, all those conversations originated at the utility board, and they simply make recommendations to us if it's over 200,000. So that it was not inappropriate that the conversation started at utility boards because they always are talking about all the different utilities. This just happened to be for solid waste. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay. And then ultimately it is our decision. I mean, we simply take their recommendation. We can say we agree with your recommendation. We can say we disagree. But ultimately it's the 7 of us who would make the ultimate decision about $1 million purchase of grapple trucks.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Young?
Sir, I guess the first, I'll start off with a statement in terms of technology. And this is what it gets down to on this technology discussion. The city of Albany has been picking up trash for 30 years. Picking up trash is picking up trash, whether you got a GSP device on the can or not. And when we talk about the complaints or the differences in the trash pickup was or the complaints that we were getting from the west side, it was simply because we had a contractor who was not performing up to the standards. I got a lot of those calls from the western side of my ward, and it was on the contractor who was not performing up to its ability. But what we were able to do was shore up that service with the city service, which did not falter in that same side. In the area I live in, I'm provide garbage service by the city of Albany directly, and not through the contractor. So it wasn't a thing that the city workers could not provide their services, or anybody that was complaining about the city. It was actually people complaining about contractor. And you don't need you don't need a special technology to know when your trash is not picked up to track that down. I got several calls that probably came in faster than any computer to tell you when they're trained.
Have we lost Ms. Young? Ms. Kelly, could we text Commissioner Young and tell him he's... Yes, sir. Okay. Hardly.
So, what about now?
Better, yes, sir.
Okay. So, on my point in terms of the technology, I don't think the technology is some type of special, special thing. We just need the trash picked up. And the workers from the city have provided this service to us for a number of years. And let me talk about this, this agenda item. You know, when these things are brought to us as a commission, and this is no, reflection on Mr. Stock or anyone, what we're looking for is, some objectivity in some of this information that we're being given. And, I think we're really lacking in terms of an apples to apples comparison. First of all, we started off with just the pros of, so-called control over solid waste.
Okay. I'll when Commissioner Young gets back, I'll just express my concerns. I was the only member of the utility board that voted against this proposal. I have numerous reasons. First, though, I want to say in the discussion, I believe in the minutes, Ms. Subadan mentioned the fact that we all know it, that benefits cost, I think she said, between 30 and 40% over what the employees' salaries are. The reason a contractor can do the service for less than the city can do it, quite frankly, is that even if the employees are paid the same hourly wage, which I don't know that would be the case, the employees are not going to have the benefits that they have for the city. What does that mean? Well, we can take the position, what's important to us as elected officials is delivering the service, efficient service at the cheapest price to the taxpayers. I don't see that as being the case. We talk about these employees can be reassigned. We've just heard that there's a net loss of 0 jobs. Well, in point of fact, you're eliminating 17 positions. If we were fully staffed, we could put 9 people to work. 9 people to work with city benefits. And what does that mean? Well, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but if somebody can insure their wife and dependents for $50 a month, they're going to take that advantage. And there's going to be some dignity to that, and this person having a pension. But if he goes out in the private sector and it's going to cost $175 or $225 a piece to insure these dependents every month, these folks are going to be on Medicaid. It's something that we need to consider, and I don't think we are really addressing this objectively. And maybe that's what Commissioner Young was referring to when he said, I don't see this as being fully addressed or vetted here, but we're all going to be guilty when we're opposed to something and the proposal is supportive of it, or if we're supportive and the proposal is against it, we're going to think that maybe we didn't get all the information. But that's the first thing I want to say, that we have city employees who work in solid waste and have made it their career, and even though they can be reassigned, and I'm sure they can within the Public Works Department, as the presentation indicated, we are still talking about eliminating 17 full-time positions from the city workforce. We need to remember that in the past, I think the last vendor was Trans Waste. The deficient performance follows in the last year or two of a contract. I remember when I was on the city commission, we had the same issue with a contract that was coming to its close. And we mobilize here, and the city steps up, the city employees. The complaints from our citizens were not about city service on the east side. The complaints were about the private contractor. We need to remember this. We have 3 commissioners who are served by the city. There's no indication that there's any disparity of service. Now, I understand, I'm not some Luddite. I mean, Commissioner Mathis said you've been picking up trash for 100 years and you hadn't had this technology. Well, it wasn't available before. We need to take advantage of it. But the fact is, and I tried to make this point at the utility board meeting, if these trucks are going to cost $2 million, whoever your contractor is going to have to buy trucks. And that's going to be included in the cost of the service that's provided. This is as was mentioned, this was a budgeted item. I was really surprised that the utility board took such an initiative on this, but certainly that's their prerogative. But what we're dealing here is nothing more than a recommendation from the utility board. I would say that I think it's an inopportune time to do this. If you're going to make this decision, we had the opportunity to make this decision and rejected it last year when it was presented to us. There is a second option of the contractor providing the service throughout the entire city. And if you remember, one of the other vendors, not Concrete Enterprises, gave us a lower price if that contractor could have the service throughout the whole community. Basically, as I see it, and I certainly don't mean to criticize the folks at Concrete Enterprise. I'm very pleased at the service they've delivered. They're good folks. But what you're doing here is essentially giving them a no-bid contract because other vendors aren't having an opportunity to make a proposal to serve this area of the community. So that's the basis of my opposition. And is Commissioner Young, did he get back online? Or not?
Yes, I'm back. I don't know for how long, but
okay. I went ahead, Commissioner Young, instead of waiting on you, but go ahead.
yeah, I heard much of what you were saying, and you were echoing some of the same comments that I had in terms of this basically amounting to a no-bid contract. If you're going to, award Concrete Enterprises this, contract, then they should have to bid on it, and they should go out for bid, or if you're going to privatize this. And there are a lot of other reasons that we need to study the privatization issue again. As I said before, sanitation and garbage is a health issue, and you should always have, that in mind as a municipality or a government in terms of having control over that. We had major issues with a contractor who was not picking up the trash. So tie the hands of your government in terms of being able to handle that situation. One of the things that, I had to deal with was a bunch of calls, because guess what? The calls are not going to come to contractors. The calls are going to come to the city. The calls are going to come to city commissioner when the contractor does not perform up to the standards. So we need to, be able to handle that. And I think, actually we have a good, situation. We have part of the contract, under a private company. So I think we're in a good place. I think we're in a good middle ground. I don't think we're making Augusta or any of those places that were mentioned. And I think, if we're going to mention some of those places, we probably should have gotten some information from them as to what their people felt about the privatization of their garbage collection. I'm sure you would have found some, people on the other side of it. So, you know, just if you want to compare, you know, other locales to Albany, but, and let me also echo the comments about city workers. One thing about it that, you know, the private contractor is under no obligation to provide same type of pay, same type of benefits, or the same type of situation for our workers as, you know, they're not obligated to do that, and they don't have to do that. And that's what we need to ensure as a municipality, that can do something to provide jobs. If that's one of the ways that we keep a stable community and providing 36 good quality jobs, then that's what we also need to look at and actually try to sustain. So I don't necessarily see that as being I think that's a definite pro for us to be able to provide these jobs. The other point I wanted to make real quick, Mayor, was, you know, I'm under the impression, since you're on the utility board, that, you know, Albany Utilities is an enterprise business. Am I hearing it said that, you know, are we operating or are we running traffic at a loss? You know, is that what's going on? Because a lot of the profits that our utility most certainly makes every year, and people talk about how high their utility bill is. Are those, you know, customers going to see savings? You know, are we going to pass the savings on because we contracted out to Concrete Enterprises? You know,
Commissioner Young, you with us? Ms. Fields, did you have something to say?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
You made a couple of statements, and I feel the need to get the record straight. One of those is this would be, when this bid was put out, this RFP was put out, it was put out asking for price for the west side only and a price for the entire city.
Right.
So it has been bid. So this would not be a no bid award of a no bid contract. Number two, the lowest price submitted for everything came from Concrete Enterprises at $2 to $3 per barrel over all of the proposers.
Okay, could I just see that? Because that's not my understanding, Ms. Fields. I thought there was another firm that had agreed to do it cheaper throughout the whole city. But just let me see that, and if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. But if you'll get that for me, I'd appreciate it. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Howard, we can go through we'll go around one more time, because maybe there's been a lot of discussion. Maybe somebody wants to.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Howard?
Mr. Mayor, I didn't hear,
Oh.
Ms. Fields.
What I said, sir, was
Mr.
that-
Mayor, I didn't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
What I said was that when the proposal was put out, the RFP was put out, it was put out asking for a price for the west side only and a price for the entire city. So the proposal, it is a bid. If you award it to the entire city, it's an award from the proposals that we already received. It's not a no bid process. We've already bid that. We got the price. And the other thing I stated was that the mayor made a statement that Concrete Enterprises did not submit the lowest proposal overall, and they did. They by $2 to $3 per barrel, they were lower for the entire city.
Is that all, Commissioner Young? Okay. Commissioner Howard, we'll go around the table one more time.
Ms. Fields, Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a question. We were talking about the price of the knuckle boomers and the grapher trucks. In the past, could the city have leased some of this equipment, or we have leased some equipment like this in the past for trucks?
We have utilized the GMA lease pool in the past. We got to the point where we had stopped using the lease pool, but that's a financing issue. We've done them both. We've either leased them or we've bought them outright.
But if we would have, do you think if we would have leased these trucks, will we, in the long run, will we save money or what?
I can't make that determination for you. I do know that when you lease equipment, when you get it, they put restrictions on how much you can use, how many hours you can use on it, what kind of damage is done to it in the end, but that's still a business decision. That would be a decision up to the commission.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, since we're going around, I need to ask you a question. Since you chair Water, Gas, and Utility Board in the city of Albany, Georgia, doesn't it seem ironic that Concrete Enterprise took over the garbage of the west side as of October 1st, 2020, and less than 2 months that it came to the Utility Board? Were you surprised or what?
I don't think, to my knowledge, Concrete Enterprise didn't initiate it. I mean, I think there was some discussion. Some board members had some reservations about the $2 million expenditure and said, well, can we do this cheaper just contracting it out? Now, of course, staff had made that suggestion sometime in the past, but I was sort of surprised because it's my understanding we were talking about purchasing some equipment because, in point of fact, the front-end loaders or grapple trucks or whatever the rest of the equipment was had outlived its useful life, I believe.
And another question, Mr. Mayor, does it seem ironic that we had just rendered this contract as we had some discussion phase back in September and August and September of last year, that this board would come up with a recommendation that we hired them for 1 year to do it and to say that they should take over the west side of the east side as well?
Well, as I made, when I was talking earlier, I said I felt like the city commission made this decision last year when we said, no, we don't want to extend the service to the east side of Slappy. I was surprised by that, yes. And what Ms. Fields has said, I would respectfully disagree with her. She says it's not a no-bid contract. Well, what you're really doing now is a third option, and that is offering household garbage pickup east of Slappy, which was not one of the two options that was presented. This is a separate contract. I would see that way, but I guess you could argue it differently. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, any other comments?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Well, I'd just like to thank Ms. Fields because I do think that maybe that was one of the things that trying to be put out on the street, that this was the no bid contract, and thank you for clearing that up. Thank all of y'all for doing a good job on this. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Warburton?
Yeah, a couple questions, Mr. Stoddard, Mr. Rowe, if y'all could respond. This technology that we keep referring to, in y'all's opinion, you deal with this every day. You deal with the phone calls and the responses. Is this technology, is it a nice to have? Is it a Cadillac? Or do you see it as, if you were bidding this out today, you would make this a requirement? Or is it optional? I mean, what is your view of this technology that we keep talking about?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. We would not consider it a Cadillac or a nice to have. We consider it necessary for more efficient operations. Again, I'll give you the example. It's the same thing. You guys had a similar thing when you talked about every time you have to roll a truck for whatever reason that's additional to the normal, that's in addition to your normal route or whatever, there's a cost associated with that. And like I've joked about either with the utility board or maybe even with this commission, was I used to joke about my mom and my stepdad going to the Harley Davidson store. She said, "What does HD stand for?" And my mom said, "HD stands for $100, because every time you go there, it costs you $100 in something." And I'm kind of making light of it and making a joke, but the fact is, every time you have to roll a vehicle in addition to its normal route, which is if you don't have this technology and somebody says, "You didn't get my garbage," you have to go back and get it, or you got to go replace the can. You're spending $100 to go out there, and you might be dropping off another $50 can. Where with this technology, we've already been able to see just in the 6 months. It's not a couple months. In the 6 months that they've been in operation, that we've been able to find those cans, put them right back, and let people know that if you move this can, again, then there's obviously going to be a problem. So. The efficiency just continues to improve. In fact, we track that, and in a given month, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, I apologize, but I can get it for you. But in a given month, there are 49,000 plus touch points that the contractor makes, and we've been called about, I think last month we got called on 7. So that's a 99.99% success rate. How do you argue with that? And it's thanks to their performance, but it's thanks to the technology. I wish we had it.
If I may weigh in, Commissioner, you spoke a while ago about the calls you've had in the past and calling me a lot. I'd just like to say, with this technology that the contractors brought forward, my life has got so much easier as far as dealing with customers. I went from getting, as you well know, anywhere from 3 to 15 calls a day for missed garbage, for yard debris, different issues. And since this technology has been put in place, I can say I can recall like 4 issues that has come to me, to my level, to address, and 3 of those was handled immediately, of course, by the contractor. But on the back end, they're able to provide with this technology pictures, date stamps, when they actually tipped the cans. We had garbage cans that we have continuously on the east side being stolen. People take them, they use them for, doing yard work, whatever. They just come up gone, and they're like $50 a pop. Well, these cans, as the technology, as they go by, it dings and let them know there's a can that's not supposed to be here. So you're able to track that. My calls, complaints on the west side have almost, I could say honestly, went away. The east side, we still have, of course, the stolen cans and some issues going on. So to address the technology, I agree with Ken. This is a necessity to be able to do business. We got the technology nowadays. It is expensive. But I think in the long run, to be able to assure you're providing equal service across board and can track everything that's going on, I think it's a necessity.
All right. My second question to the two of y'all, I keep putting y'all on the spot because this is what y'all do every day. But when you think about a business basically doubling in size, that's essentially what this would be. We're doubling their number of, around about doubling geographic number of customers. So when y'all look at your current experience in 6 months, indicators of lack of manpower, lack of resources, lack of whatever, do you see any indicators from a staff day-to-day standpoint that would be a red flag to say, hey, this company is not ready to bring on more business or to cover a larger area of the city? Do you have any doubts or red flags that have gone up?
No, sir, we do not. In fact, if we had red flags or doubts in that manner, that would have been included in our analysis.
Okay, so no letter, like in the contract, there's some provisions to, I guess, different things when there's lack of performance. There have been no actions for lack of performance in 6 months.
Correct.
Okay. Then the last question is around these vacant positions. Were these vacant positions, have they been posted? Have they been not filled because, why have the vacant positions not been filled that we currently have?
Yes, sir. The vacant positions have been posted, and we struggle to fill positions. In fact, to be honest with you, I struggle to fill positions across all areas, all departments of the city which I manage. In fact, I don't have the number in front of me. I can get it for you, but I think in all of my areas, I have almost 100 vacancies right now. We struggle to get people to want to take these jobs.
Okay, so when we say that there were vacant positions, if we'd had candidates, we'd had applicants, they would have been filled yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. And I appreciate the gentleman's comments on the I guess their view of the difference in service, but I think the difference in service is not due to the technology, but it's due to the contractor. To their credit, they have been better than the last contract.
Right.
To kind of put it in the joke, their service was trash. And my calls have also stopped from that particular area that the former contractor served. But I have never had a call from the city department, and that's to the credit of Mr. Rowe and the employees up under the city. But I will go back to what I was saying before in terms of the city also having a role to play in offering jobs. I don't think either one of our presenters would tell you that Concrete Enterprises is under any obligation to offer those 39 workers the same wage or the same benefits that the city offers, and that is an issue. That is a very big issue in these days and times. So again, I understand that everybody's abuzz with the technology and quote unquote the service, but again, at the end of the day, picking up trash is picking up trash. If it gets picked up, we don't get calls. It's one of those thankless jobs. You won't get calls. You may not. You won't get calls, but water, gas, and light offers service to the city. Would we be losing any profitability, or had you all said it? That's questions for Mr. Rowe. Profitability in terms of contracting this out, because I assume that offering these services, continuing these services would not put water, gas, and light at a non-profitable state. Am I correct?
I apologize, Commissioner. You were breaking up in your question, but I think to answer, first of all, each enterprise fund has to be looked at independently. We can't lump them all together and kind of call it water, gas, and light. So when we think about this, we think about it only in terms of solid waste. And in needing to purchase all of these vehicles, there's a cost to that, and obviously that's going to dip into the profitability of the enterprise.
Okay, that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Young. I want to ask, Ms. Stock, the slides in the presentation, they weren't in the agenda packet, so could you email that to the members of the commission?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay, I think that would address the one issue about the difference in the cost and the revenue. I understand that the private contractor, we don't have any control over what benefits they provide. I mean, I remember when we were considering Concrete Enterprises, Mr. Howard wanted details on the information, the relationship they had with one of the subcontractors. That's none of our business. But this is an issue I really think would be unwise to relinquish service on the east side. Everybody's happy with Concrete Enterprises, but most folks are happy on the honeymoon, you know. The problem with these contractors in past years has been the last year or two of the contract. We can all agree on that. And one thing I want to say that basically what happened with these last folks, they were understaffed. I mean, they were getting paid the same thing, but they weren't performing under the contract. What control do we have over that? Well, we actually mobilized city employees to pick up the slack. And this one issue about about technology, clearly, I mean, having sat through the utility board meetings, there are definite advantages with this tracking system, and I would certainly think that once new equipment's purchased for the east side of Slappy, even if the city stays in the solid waste collection business, that we'd have it when that time comes. But with that, we've heard from everybody. Thank you, Mr. Stock. Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.
Next is the city manager's update. Ms. Subadan, you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm having some camera problems this morning. Can you hear me though?
I can hear you. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Two things I wanted to bring to your attention. Of course, my bi-weekly city manager update will go out today, which will provide you with the status of projects. There has been a lot of talk about the American Rescue Plan Act, and I'm sure you have seen the news releases. I've sent out multiple emails on the information. I did want to make you aware that we are updating the sewer CSO funding plan, and our suggestion to you is that you consider allocating that funding to that plan. So at the retreat this weekend, we will be bringing you an update. It certainly is an eligible use. I know people are excited about this money, and some have great ideas, but not every great idea is an eligible expense. And if you spend federal money improperly, you're required to pay it back in the future when it's audited. Not if it's audited, but when it's audited. So the water and sewer is a clear, allowable expense, and we're excited to be able to bring you the CSO funding plan. As you recall, you passed the plan. Now we need the funding to be brought in front of you so you can see how it will benefit our community. The second thing I wanted to bring to your attention is on next week's regular meeting, you'll see a conditional item. It's an MOU for a joint city, county, and Albany Tech agreement for providing career and technical education to military personnel who are transitioning. They have 12 months to spend $60,000 in grants. Our match to that will be in kind, and paid internships will be made available for individuals transitioning out of the military. The county signed it yesterday. The technical college got notice of it very late. The county passed it yesterday, so you will see that on your agenda for next week's regular meeting. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any items, we have other business and items for future agenda. I think I get them confused and some of the commissioners get them confused, but this is items for the future agenda. Commissioner Howard?
No business
Mr. Mayor,
for the future agenda.
Ask the city manager any questions?
Yes, sir.
Report? Are we going to get to ask the city manager any questions from our report?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Any questions for the city manager? Commissioner Howard?
No question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No questions.
Commissioner Warmington?
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, ma'am, can you tell us how much exactly the city will be receiving from the new COVID stimulus package?
The American Rescue Plan outlines, I believe, $22.2 million for Albany.
Okay, I know we had some emails exchanged that I guess I thought may have spoken to, I guess in relation to us possibly receiving more if we have been considered a metropolitan statistical area. Is that correct, or am I confused on that?
No, sir, you are confused. That's a different conversation about the MSA. The way they outlined this, they were very clear on counties, entitlement cities, non-entitlement cities, and of course we fall into entitlement city because we get our HUD allocation directly. So this portion of it, the portion that's set aside for city government, this is our number, and that's what passed in the bill. However, there are several other opportunities inside of the bill, where we may be able to qualify for grant applications. But this amount, the way they described it, half will be dispersed to us within 60 days of the signing of the bill. And then the next half, once you've demonstrated that you've used that first half, the next half would be no earlier than a year later. It all has to be spent though by calendar 2024, December 2024. And so there are other opportunities in the bill, as I said. We are plowing through it. Our lobbyists are helping us. And once these allotments get assigned to federal agencies, they will put out what's called a NOFA, which is a notice of funding availability, and they'll outline their rules, their requirements, the eligible use, and the time frame. So within 60 days, the NOFAs are going to be issued by all of the federal agencies that are responsible for the American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay, so did something change? Because I thought we had conversations that we were looking maybe in like $40 million range.
No, sir, I never saw that number. Now, Doherty County is getting a separate allotment. Maybe that's what you're confused about. Doherty County is getting, I think, $17.5 million. So if you're looking at Doherty and Albany, maybe that's where you got the $40 million.
Okay, all right, gotcha. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, items for the next agenda. Mayor Pro Tem? No, John already said he didn't have anything. Mayor Pro Tem?
Nothing further.
Any items for the future agenda? Commissioner Fletcher?
No, sir, nothing further.
Commissioner Warmington?
Nothing.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to alert staff that in April, probably at the second work session, we'll be looking to have another presentation from the Food Fight Coalition. This is the coalition that came about with Georgia Tech, Albany State University, Sawega Rising, Southwest Georgia Project to bring to you some data concerning the food desert. We've done more research and actually have a community survey that we want to present to the commission to talk about some steps that we think would be beneficial to the city of Albany in light of the previous report and in light of COVID-19. If you remember that presentation was made during COVID-19 and based on some data and some other research that has been done, as well as some initiatives that have been done in the community. There's some more information to present, as well as some information in the city's data hub, which has been a great resource. Thanks again to the IT staff for managing that for us. We've been able to utilize it in a way that's just been really critical in researching the effect that food insecurity has on our community. So I'm really excited for some of the stuff that will be presented. And again, for the staff that's responsible for the agenda item, we're looking for the second work session in April to present that to the commission. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have two items for future agenda. First, we've talked before, Ms. Zubadan, I think roughly $34 million that was allocated to East Albany from the 17 flood. I'm sorry, 17 tornado. I understand it's a county project, but we need a presentation on it so I can talk intelligently when people ask me about it, what the status of the plan is. I had someone contact me and said that they'd been notified the money had been expended, and it's just a situation where we need to have at least a working understanding of what's going on. The second thing is, if we could get some figures from staff at the Chee-Haw meeting last night, has come up before, about extending city sewer into the RV area and all the way back to the park. What would the cost of that project be? But those are the two items I have for future agenda. Now, under other business, Mr. Howard.
No other business.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No other business?
Commissioner Fletcher.
No other business.
Commissioner Warburton.
No other business.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No other business.
Commissioner Young.
That's it.
Okay, I have two items. At a meeting this past week, there was some discussion about summer work program for at-risk youth, and I would like staff to look at it. I know that Athens, Clarke County has something like this, and Savannah has something like this. In some communities, it's in partnership with the private sector, but I believe particularly Athens, Clarke is the local government that operates. If we can get some information about those opportunities. And secondly, when we get in the budget process, I would like some consideration to be given to city employees being assigned to the 2 recycling centers as opposed to just using contract workers at that location. And with that, the only other item is executive session. Would any member of the commission?
Mr. Mayor, can I interrupt, please, sir? And
Yes, sir.
add, if to make the motion would add to the real estate pending litigation. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to go executive session for real estate and pending litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Howard? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Howard. So, okay. Just any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No further discussion.
Any discussion, Commissioner Fletcher?
No discussion.
Any discussion, Commissioner Warmington?
No discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No discussion.
Commissioner Young?
No discussion.
Okay, Mr. Davis, parliamentarian, I know that it's typical when a member of the commission asks that a member be excused at the beginning of the meeting. So how would we go about, is there a need to, is this a work session? So Commissioner Howard just can, we don't need to take any action, do we? Okay. All right, John, have a good day. With that, call the question. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Yes.
Commissioner Warmington?
Yes.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. With the exception of Commissioner Howard, retired to executive session to discuss pending litigation and property acquisition, and no action was taken. We are now back in the regular meeting room, and today's work session will be adjourned.
We need your help in continuing to fight the spread of COVID-19. If you are eligible to receive the COVID vaccine, I encourage you to do so. If you have family members or loved ones who are eligible, I would ask that you encourage them to be vaccinated. You and they, in doing so, will protect yourselves, your family, your friends, your co-workers, and our community.